on. But let's get to the Canberra Raiders, who, on that note, have a quite an easy draw too, if you're basing it on that, depending how you want to rank them. Lots of games against the likes of 2 games each against the Knights, the Dragons, West, Warriors, Cowboys. So quite a favourable draw. Had one of the better draws of the year. This year, am I just reading out? I'll just read out the gains and losses. Barney, you got it in front of you?
I've got the mentionable ones. I don't have everything.
I'll just quickly run through then. Kotrick, so Raiders have gained Kotrick, Elliott, Fogarty, Peter Holer, Brandon Morcos, and they've lost Caleb Aikens, who they released to England, I believe, Adam Cook, Havili to Souths, Ryan James, Louis, Medlin, Kai O'Donnell, Curtis Scott, Bailey De Simonson, Asaya Soliola retired, and George Williams obviously went back to England. Very interesting that the big signings this year, I wrote down, well, my biggest thing for Canberra is I wrote down D-Day for like half the team. Kotrick going back, Elliott has been picked up. I think it's D-Day for Fogarty in a way because I didn't think he was that good last year given the year he had the year before. He's now going to run aside.
Well, he's essentially got pressure on him to make Whiten good.
Yeah, exactly. So D-Day on Whiten, who's come from a Dally M season to what he had last year, and on a spruik back row that we all essentially I think all 3 of us tipped Canberra to win the comp last year. So they didn't. They finished 10th.
I just want to let you know I didn't. I tipped Penrith to win the comp.
Sorry, the 3 that Daggy was referring to does not include.
I was just putting that out there so I don't have to say it again.
But we had a spruik on them having the hottest back row in the comp. We had this and that and the other. I think across the board it's a massive D-Day and potentially for the coach too. Ollie, we'll go this way. Yeah. Where do they sit for you?
Probably about the same, and that's just because, like, with my argument for Brisbane jumping up, there are teams who are sort of dropped down from that area, but there are also sort of teams who were a bit under Canberra last year even that have improved, Brisbane included, Cronulla, for example. Teams have improved, and it's going to be hard for them. My opinion on them has sort of gotten a bit better now that they've signed Jamal Fogarty, just because they have a halfback in the team, and hopefully he does take that pressure off of Jack Whiten so he can sort of go back to that bit of X factor in that ball running play that he was so good at. But I don't know. I feel like as well, adding to that D-Day list, I know I've sort of bagged on him a bit last year as well, but I think it's D-Day for Ricky Stewart as well. Like if they don't make the top 8 this year, he's been at the club, this is his 10th season at Canberra. Like sometimes it's not necessarily that the coach is bad or whatever, but sometimes you just reach your expiry date and you've just got to try something new. I think if Canberra doesn't make the 8 this year, you've got to make that big change. And I think it'll be Ricky Stewart, but yeah, I've got him they could make the 8. I've got him like sort of 7th to 10th, I guess. He
had the boot up his ass. Like he was gone.
Isn't that the whole reason, essentially, why they were playing bad? Because the locker room had turned against Ricky Stewart. And then I think they beat the Bulldogs and it was all right. Yeah. But, I sort of see them around the same spot, which is a shame. They are a team, though, who, like, if you want to go at a stretch and maybe make a really bold prediction, I mean, their team's not overly dissimilar to the team who made the grand final in 2019. Still a couple of key players there. So at a stretch, I could see someone tipping them top 4. And I've seen a couple of people do that. And I've said, I see where you're going there, but like...
Are you tipping a top 4?
No way.
If they make the top 4, I'll eat a football.
but that's what I'm
Seriously.
saying.
Seriously.
If you were going really, really dark horse for a top 4 prediction, which I'm not, I could see why someone would argue Canberra. But then again, like, a lot of things would have to sort of go their way, and I don't think they will. And I think I've got them 10th.
I've got them 10th or 11th. Again, in terms of a 17, I sort of envisaged, and I actually, if it was me, I would move Whiten back to the centres. I said at the end of last year, and I would play Nickel Coxstag in the centres too. So I would be looking at which won't happen, but this is a bit pie in the sky. But Savage, Rapana, Chance, Whiten, Kotrick. I had Sam Williams at 6, Fogarty, Papaihi, Hodgson. Their other prop, Horsburgh is his name, that's right. Whitehead, Elliott, Tapine, Starling, Huira Naira, Gula, and Hudson Young. Sounds about right, I'd suggest, similar to that.
I don't think Savage will be.
They won't. They'll play. They won't move. And they won't move Whiten either. Exactly, no, but which to their detriment. But he'd have those
Savage
couple of
may
games.
Play fullback, and
they've got to play Savage at fullback.
Yeah.
And Chance.
He's a good fullback, but
he doesn't offer them what other fullbacks offer them. If they want to go to the next level, they can't. Chance can't pass a ball.
Yeah.
It's like
He can't. He's a first-grade
You're right,
footballer,
yeah.
and he can't pass a football.
I feel like
He's a good player.
Yeah.
but I
Runs
don't want
good lines, good strong ball carry.
centre.
Yeah.
And safe, exactly.
Chance is sort of like, I guess, a kebab after a late night out. Safe, sort of reliable, not too much is going to go wrong. And I think that sort of showed when he got injured early last
I've
year.
had a couple of dodgy ones.
Garlic sauce and lamb, so have I, Barney. They haven't been safe.
I'm not saying he's not able to have a dodgy one here or there, but he's not a filet mignon at a 5-star restaurant. You know what I mean? Not like a Teddy or a
Nor would I want one
Travojevic
after
was
a big
juicy.
night out,
You know what I mean? Like a nice,
Yeah.
elegant meal. He's safe. There's nothing wrong with it, but he's just sort of safe.
To put it crudely, he's a level below the top 8
Yeah.
fullbacks.
Yeah,
in
and
the
I agree completely with Gump. I think they need to play Savage at fullback. You saw there's some really good spark in that young kid, and he's got some serious talent. So I'd be moving Kotrick.
You know what? Don't be
centres.
surprised when Jared Croker starts in the
Kotrick,
centres.
Clockstad.
Like
He won't play. Surely he doesn't play again.
I have a feeling they chuck
Surely
him. They
Croker's,
put him
no,
in
but
there.
they're saying that he's on stem cell now. That's not going well. I don't think
So
he
what, you
plays
reckon
again.
he'll retire?
He can't.
He won't
I mean,
retire. He
unless
won't
he
play.
medically retires,
He was a
I think they'll
passenger.
play him.
He was embarrassing last.
And I like Jared Croker. He seems like a good bloke. He's been a good servant to the club, so I don't want to put shit on Jared Croker. But he was a passenger last year for them.
Oh, well, that's
A dead set.
Especially when
passenger.
you've even like Seb Chris is now offers them more blokes like that,
100%.
and there's such a
Tomoko.
say in Tomoko.
They've got 4 or 5 blokes that
That
can play in the
offer
centres in front of Jared Croker.
and I suspect they know that. It's just they don't want to be the ones that drop the second highest point scorer.
And
that's the thing. They might
When
want to
he's
try and
still
push it so he can just sit there and
That's
maybe
their
break the
problem.
record next year or whatever.
But I think they'll be pushing medical retirement if he's not on the field in the first couple of weeks. Gumpy, keep going. What about the rest of the side before we get to Mar?
Look, I've got them about the same as you guys. They may scrape into the 8, the Raiders on talent if White and blokes like that put it together. But I find it really hard. Outside the top 6, all the other 10 teams could run 7th or 8th. Like any of them. So I found it really hard for 7th and 8th when we come to doing the top 8 at the end. I found it really hard.
Yeah.
So I've got the Raiders in that basket of, yep, if they have a good year, they get a good start, win 3 of the first 4 games, they're on a roll, they could go that way. But I just question, I don't know, old legs maybe for them. I've always just seen them as an old team, and I know a few of those blokes, your Solly Olders and that have gone, but I just look at Canberra and think, old, not much pace. Like, that might be what it is. I don't know. They've got a whole lot of speed. They've got Kotrick back, who's a good winger, but he's not fast. Rapina's
Do they need
getting
to buy-
on.
do they need-
So I don't know that they've got
Rapina's good,
speed. I don't know they've got speed. That's probably where Savage comes in.
They don't seem
For
to
some
have that
speed.
jacket in the box that
No.
floats around
Well,
the
you know
middle
who
of the
they
field,
do have
pops up
if he
here
stays
and
out of
there,
jail
and- yeah.
is they need to start starting Starling. There's a lot of starting in one
But
system.
I mean, I don't. Old is not probably right. They just seem a bit slow for me,
No, I
and
can see what
there's
you're
no
saying, absolutely.
substitute for speed.
Yep.
They
in
don't
our
have that
game,
14
and-
that sort of comes on
No,
and picks up the
and
tempo.
even their
and-
backline, you look through their backline, and even the guys you mentioned, like Seb, Chris, and Tomoko, they're not quick.
No.
They're robust. They run hard. They tackle hard, but they don't have that spark. The bloke you think, geez, he's just going to pick up a ball and run 70 metres. They just don't seem to have it.
Savage does look like someone that could be that sort of player that pops up in and around the middle of the field, but yeah.
It's also a bit of a loss in terms of a promising young player coming through. I think Harley Smith-Shields has done his ACL or
Yes.
something, so that's another
Yes,
young
yeah.
player with potential that they can't play this year.
Barney, your thoughts?
Yeah, just on the trade result, I think they've lost a bit of depth in their forward pack. Fogarty was definitely a signing that this team needed. They needed that structure back in their halves, and they were just completely lost without it last year. They struggled. Their halves struggled so bad at different times during the year. It wasn't funny. They get Kotrick, as you said, adds a bit of strike there in the wing or centre, depending on where they play him, and it's pretty good pickup.
Sorry,
I
just
think.
to butt in, but so you're saying Kotrick back there is a tick, or is he
I
was he
believe
gone
so.
last year?
Yeah. No, I think it did no opportunities at the Bulldogs.
Yeah,
you know what I
fair
mean?
true.
The bloke was a borderline representative player when he left the Raiders, and
Oh, he's a tick.
yeah.
He's a plus, 100%.
Elliott, there's questions on his form at the back end of last year and his off-field rubbish. Obviously, if you can clean that up, that's So that should be a positive for the side, but I think they're pretty much on par of where they were last year. Maybe slight lack of depth in their forwards compared to what they had last year. As I mentioned, they looked lost for the majority of last season. Complete lack of direction in the halves, and probably the most disappointing season from any team last year, I think, considering the expectations that were on them at the start of the season.
I think for a couple of weeks at the start of last year, but Barney and I were sort of like, hey, they'll come good. It's all good. It's all good. And then it's like Homer Simpson when Lisa chucks the pig and it starts flying. It's still good. It's still good.
It's just a little airborne.
But then they produced that game against Para where they were like it had to be 4 metre offside in that game, the way the speed of their defensive line. But where they just look like world beaters and.
Good, their forward pack is good. It's a mix of youth and experience. They've got some really young, talented players in there. Some good outside backs that are coming through. Again, with Brisbane, it depends on how they put it on the field, whether they can live up to the hype that's around some of those younger guys. I think they might struggle for the first few weeks, just getting that combination between Whiten and because I expect Whiten to play at 6 and Fogarty at 7. But I think towards the back end of the season, the combination should come pretty good between those two, and I think it'll work. They just seem like I think Fogarty seems like he'll fit Whiten's game. So after last season, I don't know what to think of Canberra. They could realistically finish in the bottom 4, but wouldn't shock me if they did. But I've got them. I'm actually going to tip them to finish 8th. I think they might just sneak into the top 8.
I think that's where if someone puts a gun to my head, I think they'd be one of my bottom 2 teams in the 8.
It's sort of sad to say, but Canberra are essentially now what they were 10 years ago, aren't they? They've sort of done the lap, had their bit of form, missed their premiership window, and now they're back to the team who misses the top 8 every second year and is just kind of mediocre, and they're not necessarily crap, but they're not good either.
Mail around today that Hawira Nara might be on the Dolphins' radar. Just a quick word, Barn, on him and Tarpanay, 2 blokes I was tipping one of them as a Clive Churchill medalist in a bowl prediction 2 years ago.
If they all fire with Hudson Young, the 2 that you mentioned, they can match it with pretty much any back row in the comp. So it's dependent on how consistent those guys can be week after week.
I was just about to say the same thing. They play one good game and 3 they go missing.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's the problem they've got. Your Harawira and Iras and your Hudson Youngs and Tarpany, he could be a world beater.
He should be.
But he should be a world beater.
2 years ago, he looked like he was going to be one of the best.
He has one good game, and then 3 games you don't see him. In the NRL now, you can't do that. No. You cannot go missing for those periods of time and expect results.
You look at, as you mentioned, everyone from probably 8th or even 6th down, they're going to be taking points off each other every week.
That's right.
Teams are going to be beating teams, and then they'll lose to a team that's ranked below them the next week. So it's going to be even closer, I think, this year than what it was last year.
There will be one team that'll put together 4 or 5 in a row and make the 8. That's what.
And you know what? Because it happens every year. A couple of these gigs that we're talking about right now will hand the Cowboys one of their 3 wins in the season and one of Newcastle's 4 wins in the season, aren't they? So
Sharks did it
where they'll
twice
just
last
play,
year.
where they'll just they just can't catch a ball and
and it'll be a game where it's seemingly it's like pretty much hand them the win and then they lose. It's like